Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I will be doing another full book review, this time of the Merciless series by Danielle Vega. She is one of my absolute favorite authors and this series did not disappoint. I love it, I love it, I love it. So let's get right into it. So a quick plot line. All of the books are basically, they're all different, but the basic plot involves teenage girls and exorcisms. So if you don't think you're gonna like that, then you're probably not gonna like this series. Or, you know, like possessions, whatever, stuff like that. For mature audiences only, so please take that into account. So I'm going to talk more about the first book before I get into the spoilers, as usual. So the first book is about a new girl named Sophia. This is a 4-book series. Let me start by saying that. It's about a new girl, Sophia, who moves to a school and becomes friends with an outsider named Brooklyn, and then also like the popular crowd. Turns out that Brooklyn actually used to be one of the popular crowd, and they all used to be friends, and then something happened. Doesn't really say what it is. They all end up at like a sleepover party kind of thing, meaning Sophia, the popular people, and Brooklyn. And the popular people end up saying, oh, Brooklyn's possessed, we're going to do an exorcism on her. And Brooklyn is like, WTF, I'm not possessed, what do you mean? And Sophia's like, you guys are nuts. And their idea of possession and exorcism is more like torture. The things that they do to her are very disturbing. So Sophia's horrified, she wants to escape, but she doesn't want to be the one tortured next. So that's kind of where she begins to struggle on like what to do. So a few of the characters are Sophia, she's Latina, she's the main character. So Sophia's very sweet. I describe her as bland enough to be relatable, but like, I feel like she's just a typical main character kind of person. Brooklyn is very sassy, strong personality. She is a little bit more alternative, like I've talked about in some other books. The popular girls, honestly, aren't even really different enough for me to give them names. At this point, they're all just like the normal teenage, stereotypical popular girls that are rude and whatever else you want to say. Something I loved about this series is that even though there's 4 books, they're not all the same. It doesn't all follow the same story, so it's not boring. The first book I feel like is very just like typical, like it's exactly what you think you're gonna get, and the other ones are quite different, which I will get into later if you keep watching. It doesn't all follow the same main character. Some of the places they take place are a public high school, Catholic boarding school, Italy, church, mental hospital. Like there's many places in these series, so that's kind of cool. Within this series, sometimes there are certain characters that are narrators that end up being possessed. So I find it interesting to see the switch. It's all from the first point of view, like I did this and I did that. So it's interesting to see the switch in their personality once they're possessed and the kind of ways that they think, because it's completely different from the person that you knew the rest of the book or the series. Something I didn't like. Similarly to what I liked, everything being different made the timeline very confusing, which I will explain later on, but again, I don't want to spoil anything. I wish that they had been dated or something. I didn't read them back to back or really close together. It became like, what? I will explain more in the spoiler zone, but if you watch that far, you'd be like, oh yeah, that would be confusing. A small part that I will say about what I didn't like is that it was very, very gory and disturbing. I liked that because I like horror movies and I like that kind of thing because there's something wrong in my brain, I guess. It made it much more intriguing to read, but if you're faint of heart, please, please don't read these, because the kind of things like, they could have just said what happened, but the descriptors that Danielle Vega goes into, which is why I like her writing, she's very descriptive and she makes you fall in love with her characters so easily, but the kind of things that happened were disgusting. Another thing that I will mention is that these books are very slow burn, where they start off and there's like creepy scenes every once in a while and you're kind of just getting used to the characters and things seem kind of off, but like it's fine. And then in the last quarter of the book, third of the book, it's like full throttle, scariest crap you've ever read kind of thing. I will rate this series 5 out of 5. I really like these books. I would probably read them again because, as I will explain, I don't remember them all as much as I would like to. And I mean, I don't really get sick of stuff like that, so Yeah, I would definitely read them again. I'd probably read them closer together so that I'm not as confused. Even though I've read them all before, there's still things that don't really make sense to me, which I will get into. The order of these, even though I said like I like them all, I want to say how I would rank them. So the second book was my favorite. And then the first and the fourth are kind of tied. They're very different stories. The first is much more of a basic like teenage novel. And the fourth one takes place, it's the one that takes place in Italy, so that was really interesting to me. I can't decide which I liked more. The first one is obviously one of those books that's like, has a special place in your heart because it's the first one. So yeah, they're tied. And then the third one is still good, but it's just not my favorite. Similar books. This is again one of the series where I cannot really think of a similar book necessarily. I read lots of books that have things like this in them, like scary things, but not a whole lot of exorcisms, and nothing where the characters are so strong and it's so descriptive. However, I've seen everywhere, it is like the most cliche thing that people say about this series is that it's a combination of The Exorcist and Mean Girls. And I completely have to agree, specifically in the first book. It is very much, like I think that they even quote, like some girls just make a burn book, but instead you're gonna torture this girl because you think she's possessed. Like things like that. I still really liked it. If you look up the reviews on this book, some people rate it 1 star because they think it's dumb and cheesy, and some people rate it 5. So I'm one of the people that would rate it 5. It's obviously not for everybody, but I did really enjoy this series. So now I'm going to get into my spoiler section. So please, if you are interested in reading these, click off because I'm not going to go into complete detail on every book. There will still be things that will be interesting to you, but I will explain something about the characters that, if you want to read them, would kind of suck to hear first. So I hope you guys enjoyed this, and I will see you next time. Or if you don't think that this is really for you, but you're still interested in what happens, keep watching.
Spoilers.
Plot of the first book. Ending, everybody dies. Everybody dies. Except for Sophia. So Brooklyn, because they tortured her so bad, she ends up dying. Turns out she was possessed, so they were actually right. But that is something about possessed people, is that sometimes they can like fake it really well and you don't know they're possessed. But I think there's 3 popular girls, were actually correct, and she was possessed. I read this book a year and a half ago, 2 years ago now, and I don't necessarily remember what happens to the other girls, but I do know that all 3 of the other popular girls do end up dying. The only one that makes it out is Sophia. So some of the notes that I had said is that, so she was possessed, so they were rightful to exorcise her, but not necessarily in the way that they did it, because it was straight up torture, the things that they did to her. I don't even necessarily remember, and I think I've blocked it out, because that's the thing about these books. They're just so disturbing to read. But what do I know about performing an exorcism? Anyways, she died. The other popular girls die in various ways, all, again, very disturbing. Something I will say, so I don't know if I know that I showed at the beginning, this is the book. Obviously you can see the pentagram on the front cover, that's how you know. And this is where the description is of the book, and it's all of the ones I have are hardcover except for the second one for some unknown reason. We're not even gonna talk about how much that bothers me. Something else I don't really love about these books, I like the look of it, but it's one of those books that, can you tell that the pages are all like, some of the pages are longer than the other ones? Like it gives it a cool look. Do you know what I mean? It's just a little bit hard sometimes to like turn the pages, I guess. That's basically all that I have to say about the first book, honestly. The first book I read a long time ago. It is exactly what it sounds like. It's not really a whole lot of other things. The second book, this is the second one. It is gold, it is very pretty, but not even close to the prettiest one, so we'll get into that. The second book, I was really excited because I really liked her relationship with her mom and her whole family. Her mom dies, right at the beginning. Right smack at the beginning, like 20 pages in. It starts out and Sophia's having all these visions, and her therapist is saying, you know, like, well, you've been through traumatic things, like you're hallucinating, but she doesn't actually think she's hallucinating. And then, yeah, her mom dies. So then she gets sent away to a different boarding school. Basically, she can get like into an adoption fostering program, or she can go away to this boarding school. So she gets sent to a Catholic boarding school. I don't really remember, but I remember enough to know it was my favorite book in the series because I loved it. It was so good. And I didn't really have high hopes. It was so good. In the second book, you get to know like her roommates and her teachers and that kind of thing. And you get suspicious of people. There are always the slow burn, creepy scenes like I was talking about. So occasionally over time you're like, this is kind of weird, this is kind of weird, and it all comes together in the end, of course. Honestly, I would even just recommend reading this book. You don't necessarily need to know what happened in the first one. It's not really connected, except you know something traumatic happened to her. It's the least connected to all the other books, I will say. She ends up getting into a relationship with the pastor's son there, I believe. I think he's a pastor's son, like I said, this was a while ago. Similar to the first book, this is a very common theme in all the books, he thinks she's possessed. So he starts doing this same kind of torture exorcism on her. I don't know where these people learn to do their exorcisms, but they need to go and get their money back, because I believe she is actually possessed. I think it's, again, similar to the first book. I think she is actually possessed. Crazy plot twists I can't even explain in an hour if I was to film a long video, but just crazy things happen. Anyways, that is a very good one. This is the third book. It is a pretty. It is like a rainbow opal. There's like sparkles in it. I like it. This book is Brooklyn's point of view. Now, you may be going, but didn't Brooklyn die? Yes, that's what I was confused about as well. Turns out, this is like a prologue to the first book. This is probably a few weeks before the first book starts, and it kind of just goes into her backstory with the popular girls and what happened there, and almost like how she gets possessed, or like it shows a little bit more that she is possessed. And the last scene in the third book is the first scene in the first book where she's meeting Sophia, and you see it from like her point of view, where you see what she was thinking and that it wasn't actually a coincidence that they met, like she kind of sought her out. So yeah, it ends up being just a little bit of her backstory. So that one was the most confusing to me because I read the first one quite a while ago. Like I said, it was definitely over a year and a half ago, maybe even 2 years, and I wasn't even completely sure what was happening until the very last scene where she met Sophia. And I was like, okay, so she did die. Like, I was very, very, very confused. Like I said, I wish that they were dated or that there was some explanation somewhere, like before everything happens kind of thing. So that's all I'm gonna say about the third book. There's like the least amount of things that happen in it that need to be talked about, I will say. I don't know how else to word that, but finally, we have the fourth one that I finished the other day. This is kind of like a black marble cover. Basically just the Merciless 1, 2, 3, and 4. The second one is called the Exorcism of Sophia Flores, which is Sophia. And the last one is called Last Rites. I don't remember what the first or third one are called. What the heck was that? The fourth book follows a character named Berkeley. Again, I was confused because Berkeley, Brooklyn. So it also does one of those things that sometimes books do where it's like before and after. So the before, she's in a mental hospital. So it'll be like, I think it's every like second or third chapter, it switches over. Like there's 2 chapters of the before and then 2 chapters of the after, and it kind of went back and forth during the book. So she's in a mental hospital and you don't really know why until the very end. And her roommate is Sophia, as in that Sophia. But it's quite obvious when you have read the other books that Sophia's acting kind of weird. And so I believe she actually is like still possessed. I think that what happened is in the second one, when she was at the church, there's a bunch of stuff that went down right at the end, and I think that the police ended up showing up. And so my theory is that she told them what happened and they thought that she was crazy and they committed her, and that's why she's in the fourth one. The unknown cause she's there, it ends up being that she and the popular group at her school basically bullied her friend into committing suicide. They didn't like mean to, but it's like they did some really awful things to her that she didn't want to live anymore. So she feels really guilty about that death. That's kind of the whole reason that she is in the hospital, and she had a mental breakdown, she calls it like a snap, and did some crazy things, and that's why she's now in the hospital. The after part is, like I said, this book takes place in Italy mainly. So she's left the hospital and she meets her friends, as in the aforementioned popular people, her friends, and they are currently in Italy for kind of like a school summer program. It's like an art program, and she meets them there. And let me just say that this friend who committed suicide was like her best friend from day one kind of thing. And then in high school, they wanted to be with the popular people, and the popular people accepted them. They were so excited. So the 2 of them joined the popular group, and then Berkeley ended up becoming much closer with them, kind of freezed her friend out, and then all of them ended up bullying her friend so bad that she committed suicide. So it's like, of course she's gonna feel horrible guilt over that because that was her person growing up. Flashes back and forth between her odd experiences in Italy and her odd experiences in the mental hospital with Sophia. At the end of the before section, Sophia kills herself. So she finally gets Berkeley to admit what she's done, and that's kind of the thing, I guess, is you need to admit to your evil in order to be possessed. So she hangs herself, and like once Berkeley admits what she's done to Sophia, Sophia's like, and then hangs herself, and it's like, what the heck are you doing? And then as Berkeley's horrified, Sophia's body like basically moves, and all this black smoke comes out of her and goes into Berkeley and like possesses Berkeley. So now it's almost like they've switched bodies kind of. So now it's like Berkeley's dead. Like the dead body is Berkeley and Sophia's in Berkeley's body. Like I said, kind of confusing. So that's the end of the before. And so then the whole book that had all the after parts, then you're like, okay, so has it been Sophia this whole time? Was it still Berkeley and Sophia was kind of like lying dormant in her? These are things that don't really get explained. The end of the after is that Sophia Berkeley, main character, is being tortured or exorcised by a bunch of girls in this Italy town. There's 3 girls who are involved with the church there, and they think that she is possessed. And this is the thing where you're like, oh my god, again, she's not actually possessed. She is actually possessed, and it's the same person from the very first book. So I think that what happened in the first book, I think that Brooklyn possessed Sophia at the very end. In the second one, I think Sophia's been possessed the whole time and it didn't really come out. The third one was the backstory, and then the fourth one, at the end of the before part, Sophia technically possessed Berkeley, and every time that they were in Italy, it was actually like Sophia and Berkeley's body. Very confusing. They think that she's possessed by the devil, which she basically is. Like I think that Brooklyn is possessed by the devil, and I think it's just passed through all these girls kind of thing. She then ends up killing the 3 people that are trying to exorcise her. She kills the guy who she's been in a relationship with in this book, which is just a whole other thing. She kills a police officer because the police officer is the brother of one of the girls that did the exorcism on her, and she leads her brother, the police officer, to Sophia, and then she kills them both. And then finally, she ends up killing the 2 popular girls, that her friends, like Berkeley's friends that she went to Italy with. She kills them because basically now at this point she's just accepted that like she's been possessed or whatever, and she's fully evil, and she kills them. And it's basically just because she thinks how it's so awful that they don't feel guilty for having bullied this other girl into committing suicide. It's basically like, you're awful people, you deserve to die kind of thing. She then burns down the building with herself inside. I think this is the part that's so confusing, because it says things about how it was a worthy death and she was laughing as the building crumbled down around her, all that kind of thing. So it would make you think she's dead, right? Plus it's the end of the series, so you'd think, hey, now like the devil, whatever spirit is like gone. However, the ending on the 4th book, I'm so confused. It starts at Sophia's grave, and somebody's talking to the gravedigger and is saying like, oh yeah, she was a very sick girl and I hope she's better. And it just talks about how like brushing the long dark hair over her back, which is what Sophia looked like. So then I'm like, is it actually Sophia? Is it the devil possessing somebody else's body that looks like Sophia? Is it not Sophia that's in the casket that's being lowered into the ground? Like, so I don't really understand that. Yeah, so that was just the only thing, is that it kind of ended in a confusing way. My final thoughts are that it is such a good series, even though it was confusing at times. I read each book in a 24-hour period, I'm pretty sure. For the second one and the 4th one, for sure, I read in 24 hours. I would still recommend reading them, even though I was confused at certain things. Just maybe try to pay more attention than I did, because I'm thinking I just read through it really quick, because I do that thing sometimes where if it's like a big scene, I jump to the next page and I'm like, I'm skimming it, trying to figure out what happens quicker than I can read it. I highly, highly recommend this series if you like horror movies, or like I said, if you would like something like a cross between Mean Girls and The Exorcist. I definitely recommend. And I mean, if you're one of those people that likes books, like the look of them, they're so pretty. Like, how can you not want these on your shelves? At the same time, I also recommend all of Danielle Vega's other books if you would like things like this, if you start to read the series and know you like it, or if you've watched the end and now I've spoiled all this for you, but you think, oh, you would like something like that. All of the books by her are really good. My favorite one is Survive the Night. I like it better than this series. The darker one here, it has a skull on the cover, just if you're looking for it. I'd really recommend that one. I've read it multiple times, but years ago, so I'm probably not going to review it. I can just say, as if this was a review on Danielle Vega herself, read all of her books if you think that you would like things like that. And I think that's everything for this review. Thank you guys so much. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And let me know down below if you think that this would be a good series for you, or if you can think of series that are similar that you think I might enjoy. I will see you guys next time. Bye guys. Back up. Then basically the end of the after part is where, oh, that scared me. Ah.